The floor of the arena split open with a grinding mechanical roar that echoed off the crystal dome walls. Steam hissed from the opening as hydraulic platforms rose from the depths below. The children pressed themselves against the back wall of their small shelter, their hearts beating so fast their translators picked up the rhythm as a universal language of terror. From the darkness emerged the Vrakthul, and even the seasoned council members in their viewing boxes drew back in surprise. The creature had grown larger during its captivity, feeding on the artificial nutrients pumped into its cell. Its black carapace gleamed with moisture, and its 6 legs moved with predatory grace as it tested the arena floor. Multiple eyes swiveled independently, scanning for prey while its massive head swayed back and forth. Sampling scents, the small Zephyrian child whimpered, her transparent wings folding tight against her back. The Vrakthul's head snapped toward the sound immediately, and its hunting instincts locked onto the huddled group. A low, rumbling growl emerged from its throat, a sound that seemed to vibrate through the very bones of everyone present. Captain Sarah Chen's hands flew over her ship's controls as she pushed the Defiance beyond its recommended speeds. The stealth system strained under the energy requirements, but she couldn't risk being detected by Council patrol ships. Her communications officer, Lieutenant Martinez, monitored the arena's broadcast while tracking their approach vector. "Captain, we're still 47 minutes out at current speed," Martinez reported, his voice tight with urgency. "The creature is already in the arena." Sarah's jaw clenched as she watched the nightmare unfolding on her screens. The beast was toying with the children, moving in slow circles around their hiding spot. It could have attacked immediately, but its bioengineered instincts were designed for maximum entertainment value. The Council wanted fear, desperation, and prolonged suffering for their audiences. "Reroute all auxiliary power to the engines," Sarah ordered. "Strip it from life support, artificial gravity, everything non-essential. And prep the teleporter array." Her crew moved with practiced efficiency, each member understanding the stakes. They had all volunteered for this mission, knowing it was likely a one-way trip. The Defiance was an old exploration vessel, repurposed with experimental technology that barely worked under normal conditions. What they were attempting was theoretically impossible according to galactic physics. In the arena, the Vorthak child had become the unofficial leader of the group. Her species had evolved from pack hunters, and she retained instincts for group coordination even at her young age. "When it attacks," she whispered to the others, and we spread out. "Make it choose one target while the others run." The Krothak child shook his head, small rocks falling from his skin. "My people never run. We stand together." "Your people also have thick skin," the insectoid hiver pointed out with logical precision. "My exoskeleton will not stop those claws." The Vrakthul suddenly reared up on its hind legs, letting out a roar that shattered several of the crystal formations decorating the arena walls. The sound was so loud that even the council members had to cover their various auditory organs. When the creature dropped back down, it began moving with purpose toward the children's position. Ambassador Kelthera leaned forward in anticipation, her 4 eyes focusing on different aspects of the scene below. This was always her favorite moment, when hope died in the prey's eyes and survival instinct took over. She had watched hundreds of these trials, and they never failed to provide excellent entertainment. The arena's environmental systems detected the creature's elevated stress hormones and automatically adjusted the lighting to enhance the dramatic effect. Spotlights followed the Vrakthul's movement while casting long shadows that made it appear even larger and more threatening. The children's shelter was illuminated like a stage, making them perfect targets for both the creature and the cameras. Aboard the Defiance, Engineer Wong reported from the engine room. "Captain, we're pushing into dangerous territory. Hull stress is approaching critical levels and the stealth generators are overheating." Sarah didn't hesitate. "Keep pushing." "How long until the teleporter is ready?" 15 minutes for full charging, but we could attempt a partial transport in 8 if necessary." Partial transport was a euphemism for a procedure that had a 60% chance of killing whoever they tried to rescue. The technology was experimental, designed for emergency evacuation of small objects, not living beings. But it was the only option they had for getting into the arena without triggering the Council's defensive systems. The Vrakthul finally made its move, lunging toward the children's shelter with terrifying speed. The youngsters scattered as planned, but the creature was faster than they had anticipated. Its claws raked across the rocky skin of the Krothak child, who had tried to shield the smaller Zephyrian. The impact sent him flying across the arena floor, leaving deep gouges in his natural armor. The audience in the viewing platforms cheered, their various forms of approval creating a cacophony of alien sounds. Some threw tokens into collection boxes, betting on which child would be caught first. Others activated recording devices to capture personal copies of the most exciting moments. The Zephyrian child tried to use her wings to escape, but they were designed for gliding, not true flight in the arena's artificial gravity. She managed to gain a few feet of altitude before exhaustion forced her down. The Vrakthul's powerful legs coiled and released, launching it through the air toward her position. Time seemed to slow as the creature's claws extended toward the helpless child. The other youngsters screamed in their various languages, creating a universal chorus of anguish that echoed through the dome. Even some of the council members shifted uncomfortably, though they made no move to intervene. At the last second, the Aquarian child managed to spray a jet of processed water into the Vrakthul's eyes. The creature's trajectory shifted slightly, and instead of catching the Zephyrian, it crashed into the arena wall. Chunks of crystal and metal rained down as the beast shook its head, temporarily blinded but now absolutely furious. The momentary respite gave the children a chance to regroup, but they were running out of space to maneuver. The arena was large but not infinite, and the Vrakthul's enhanced senses would adapt quickly to their tactics. The Hever child's antennae detected pheromone changes in the air, warning of the creature's increasing aggression levels. Meanwhile, Sarah Chen stared at the tactical display showing their approach to the council station. Warning lights flashed across her console as system after system reported dangerous overloads. The Defiance was literally tearing itself apart in the effort to reach the children in time. "Captain," her communications officer called out urgently, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the arena. They're charging some kind of barrier system." Sarah's blood ran cold. The council was preparing to seal the arena completely, preventing any outside interference. Once those barriers activated, nothing would be able to get in or out until the trial was complete. She had perhaps minutes before her rescue attempt became impossible. The race was on, with 12 innocent lives hanging in the balance and an entire civilization's reputation for compassion, driving one small ship toward what seemed like certain destruction. The floor of the arena split open with a grinding mechanical roar that echoed off the crystal dome walls. Steam hissed from the opening as hydraulic platforms rose from the depths below. The children pressed themselves against the back wall of their small shelter, their hearts beating so fast their translators picked up the rhythm as a universal language of terror. From the darkness emerged the Vrakthul, and even the seasoned council members in their viewing boxes drew back in surprise. The creature had grown larger during its captivity, feeding on the artificial nutrients pumped into its cell. Its black carapace gleamed with moisture, and its 6 legs moved with predatory grace as it tested the arena floor. Multiple eyes swiveled independently, scanning for prey while its massive head swayed back and forth. "Sampling sense," the small Zephyrian child whimpered, her transparent wings folding tight against her back. The Vrakthul's head snapped toward the sound immediately, and its hunting instincts locked onto the huddled group. A low, rumbling growl emerged from its throat, a sound that seemed to vibrate through the very bones of everyone present. Captain Sarah Chen's hands flew over her ship's controls as she pushed the Defiance beyond its recommended speeds. The stealth system strained under the energy requirements, but she couldn't risk being detected by Council patrol ships. Her communications officer, Lieutenant Martinez, monitored the arena's broadcast while tracking their approach vector. "Captain, we're still 47 minutes out at current speed," Martinez reported, his voice tight with urgency. "The creature is already in the arena." Sarah's jaw clenched as she watched the nightmare unfolding on her screens. The beast was toying with the children, moving in slow circles around their hiding spot. It could have attacked immediately, but its bioengineered instincts were designed for maximum entertainment value. The Council wanted fear, desperation, and prolonged suffering for their audiences. "Reroute all auxiliary power to the engines," Sarah ordered. "Strip it from life support, artificial gravity, everything non-essential, and prep the teleporter array." Her crew moved with practiced efficiency, each member understanding the stakes. They had all volunteered for this mission knowing it was likely a one-way trip. The Defiance was an old exploration vessel, repurposed with experimental technology that barely worked under normal conditions. What they were attempting was theoretically impossible according to galactic physics. In the arena, the Vorthak child had become the unofficial leader of the group. Her species had evolved from pack hunters, and she retained instincts for group coordination even at her young age. When it attacks, she whispered to the others, "We spread out. Make it choose one target while the others run." The Krothak child shook his head, small rocks falling from his skin. "My people never run. We stand together." "Your people also have thick skin," the insectoid hiver pointed out with logical precision. "My exoskeleton will not stop those claws." The Vrakthul suddenly reared up on its hind legs, letting out a roar that shattered several of the crystal formations decorating the arena walls. The sound was so loud that even the council members had to cover their various auditory organs. When the creature dropped back down, it began moving with purpose toward the children's position. Ambassador Kelthera leaned forward in anticipation, her 4 eyes focusing on different aspects of the scene below. This was always her favorite moment when hope died in the prey's eyes and survival instinct took over. She had watched hundreds of these trials, and they never failed to provide excellent entertainment. The arena's environmental systems detected the creature's elevated stress hormones and automatically adjusted the lighting to enhance the dramatic effect. Spotlights followed the Vrakthul's movement while casting long shadows that made it appear even larger and more threatening. The children's shelter was illuminated like a stage, making them perfect targets for both the creature and the cameras. Aboard the Defiance, Engineer Wong reported from the engine room. "Captain, we're pushing into dangerous territory. Hull stress is approaching critical levels and the stealth generators are overheating." Sarah didn't hesitate. "Keep pushing. How long until the teleporter is ready?" 15 minutes for full charging, but we could attempt a partial transport in 8 if necessary. Partial transport was a euphemism for a procedure that had a 60% chance of killing whoever they tried to rescue. The technology was experimental, designed for emergency evacuation of small objects, not living beings. But it was the only option they had for getting into the arena without triggering the Council's defensive systems. The Vrakthul finally made its move, plunging toward the children's shelter with terrifying speed. The youngsters scattered as planned, but the creature was faster than they had anticipated. Its claws raked across the rocky skin of the Krothak child, who had tried to shield the smaller Zephyrian. The impact sent him flying across the arena floor, leaving deep gouges in his natural armor. The audience in the viewing platforms cheered, their various forms of approval creating a cacophony of alien sounds. Some threw tokens into collection boxes, betting on which child would be caught first. Others activated recording devices to capture personal copies of the most exciting moments. The Zephyrian child tried to use her wings to escape, but they were designed for gliding, not true flight in the arena's artificial gravity. She managed to gain a few feet of altitude before exhaustion forced her down. The Vrakthul's powerful legs coiled and released, launching it through the air toward her position. Time seemed to slow as the creature's claws extended toward the helpless child. The other youngsters screamed in their various languages, creating a universal chorus of anguish that echoed through the dome. Even some of the council members shifted uncomfortably, though they made no move to intervene. At the last second, the Aquarian child managed to spray a jet of processed water into the Vrakthul's eyes. The creature's trajectory shifted slightly, and instead of catching the Zephyrian, it crashed into the arena wall. Chunks of crystal and metal rained down as the beast shook its head, temporarily blinded but now absolutely furious. The momentary respite gave the children a chance to regroup, but they were running out of space to maneuver. The arena was large but not infinite, and the Vrakthul's enhanced senses would adapt quickly to their tactics. The Hiver child's antennae detected pheromone changes in the air, warning of the creature's increasing aggression levels. Meanwhile, Sarah Chen stared at the tactical display showing their approach to the council station. Warning lights flashed across her console as system after system reported dangerous overloads. The Defiance was literally tearing itself apart in the effort to reach the children in time. "Captain," her communications officer called out urgently, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the arena. They're charging some kind of barrier system." Sarah's blood ran cold. The council was preparing to seal the arena completely, preventing any outside interference. Once those barriers activated, nothing would be able to get in or out until the trial was complete. She had perhaps minutes before her rescue attempt became impossible. The race was on. With 12 innocent lives hanging in the balance and an entire civilization's reputation for compassion, driving one small ship toward what seemed like certain destruction. The Vrakthol's vision cleared just as the arena's energy barriers began to shimmer into existence around the dome's perimeter. The massive creature turned its attention back to the scattered children, its multiple eyes tracking each small form with predatory calculation. Saliva dripped from its razor-sharp teeth as it decided which target would provide the most satisfying hunt. The Vorthak child had managed to lead 3 of the others to a cluster of broken crystal formations that offered some cover. Her purple scales were dim with exhaustion, but her voice remained steady as she coordinated their desperate defense. "The water sprayer worked before," she whispered to the Aquarian child. "Can you do it again?" The small blue-skinned child shook his head sadly. "My internal reservoirs need time to refill. Maybe one more spray, but then I am empty." Across the arena, the injured Krothak child was trying to rejoin the group despite the deep cuts in his rocky hide. Each step left a small trail of stone dust and mineral blood, but his species' legendary stubbornness kept him moving. The Zephyrian child stayed close to him, her delicate wings useless for escape, but her small hands surprisingly strong as she helped support her larger companion. Ambassador Kelthera watched the barrier generators reach full power with satisfaction. The dome was now completely sealed, making the arena an isolated pocket of space where no outside forces could interfere. She had learned from previous trials that some species would attempt rescue missions, though none had ever succeeded in reaching the arena itself. "Increase the creature's aggression stimulators," she commanded her technicians. "The audience is growing restless. We need more action." Hidden injectors in the arena floor released a cloud of synthetic pheromones designed to trigger the Vrakthol's most violent instincts. The creature's pupils dilated as the chemicals entered its system, and its movements became more erratic and aggressive. What little restraint its bioengineered mind possessed disappeared completely. The beast launched itself at the nearest group of children with terrifying speed. The small hiver had been using her natural ability to detect chemical changes in the air, trying to find patterns in the arena's environmental controls. Her compound eyes spotted the incoming attack just in time to shriek a warning, but there was nowhere to run. The Vrakthol's massive claw swept through the space where she had been standing, missing by inches as the Vorthak child tackled her smaller companion out of the way. They rolled together across the smooth arena floor, coming to rest against one of the crystal barriers that hummed with deadly energy. Aboard the Defiance, alarms screamed as the ship's hull began to buckle under the extreme forces of their emergency acceleration. Captain Saracen ignored the warnings, her attention focused entirely on the tactical display showing their rapidly approaching target. The council station grew larger on her screens, its massive structure bristling with defensive weapons and sensor arrays. "Barrier strength at maximum," Lieutenant Martinez reported, his voice strained. "Captain, even if we could get through, the energy discharge would probably kill anyone inside the arena." Sarah's fingers danced across her console, pulling up schematics of the station that human intelligence had gathered over years of careful observation. "There," she pointed to a small access port near the station's lower levels. "Emergency maintenance shaft. It's not covered by the main barriers because it's considered too small for ship-to-ship combat." Engineer Wong's voice crackled through the comm system from the engine room. "Captain, that shaft is barely 3 meters wide. We'd have to approach at exactly the right angle, and our ship is already structurally compromised." "Then we'd better not miss," Sarah replied grimly. "Begin teleporter charging sequence. Target the arena floor, maximum dispersal pattern." Her crew understood what she was planning. Instead of trying to beam the children out through the barriers, they were going to beam themselves in. It was suicide by any reasonable standard, but reason had little place in human decision-making when children were in danger. Back in the arena, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. The Vraktol had cornered half the children against one of the energy barriers, its massive form blocking their escape routes. The creature seemed to understand that it had them trapped, and it was savoring the moment before the final attack. The injured Krothak child tried to position himself between the beast and the smaller children, but his wounds had weakened him significantly. Stone dust continued to fall from his damaged hide, and his movements were slow and painful. Still, he refused to back down, his species' protective instincts overriding his own survival needs. The Zephyrian child looked up at the crystal dome overhead, Her large eyes filled with tears that sparkled in the artificial light. "I want to go home," she whispered in her native language, the universal translator carrying her words to everyone present. The phrase echoed through the arena's audio systems, reaching the viewing platforms where hundreds of council dignitaries watched in comfort. A few of the more sensitive species shifted uncomfortably at the obvious distress in the child's voice, but none made any move to intervene. The trials were sacred tradition, they told themselves, necessary for maintaining galactic order. Ambassador Kelthera felt no such discomfort. She leaned forward eagerly as the Vrakthul prepared for its final assault, knowing that the climax of the trial was moments away. The creature's multiple eyes focused on the Zephyrian child, recognizing her as the weakest and most vulnerable target. The beast reared up on its hind legs, letting out another bone-shaking roar that cracked several more crystal formations. Its claws extended to their full length, gleaming like polished metal in the arena's dramatic lighting. Time seemed frozen as it prepared to strike down at the helpless child. At that exact moment, the Defiant slammed into the council station's maintenance shaft with tremendous force. The impact sent shockwaves through both vessels, shattering the human ship's already weakened hull, and triggering emergency systems throughout the station. Sparks flew from damaged conduits and several of the arena's lighting systems flickered and died. In the confusion, the teleporter array activated with a brilliant flash of blue-white energy. The process was rushed and imprecise, but Engineer Wong had managed to lock onto the arena floor just as the ship's power systems failed completely. Emergency klaxons wailed throughout the station as damage control teams scrambled to assess the unexpected collision. The Vrakthul's attack was interrupted by the sudden appearance of 5 figures, materializing in the arena through swirling columns of energy. They wore simple environmental suits marked with symbols the galactic databases didn't recognize, but their body language spoke of determination and barely controlled anger. Captain Sarah Chen hit the arena floor running, her suit systems already analyzing the tactical situation. She carried weapons that looked primitive compared to standard galactic technology, but there was something about her movements that suggested deadly competence. Behind her, her crew spread out in a defensive formation, placing themselves between the massive creature and the terrified children. For the first time in the arena's history, the Vrakthul found itself facing opponents who showed no fear. The human scent was different from anything it had encountered before, carrying chemical markers that its instincts couldn't quite classify. Were they prey or predator? The beast's bioengineered mind struggled to process this new development. Ambassador Kelthera stood up in her viewing box, her 4 eyes wide with shock and fury. "Impossible," she shrieked. "The barriers are at full strength. How did they penetrate our defenses?" But the humans were already moving, and their actions would soon teach the Galactic Council a lesson about what happened when Earth's children were threatened. Captain Sarah Chen moved with fluid precision as she assessed the arena, her enhanced environmental suit providing real-time analysis of the massive creature before them. The Vrakthul stood nearly twice her height, its multiple eyes tracking her movements with predatory interest. But Sarah had spent 20 years fighting in Earth's colonial conflicts, and she recognized a bioweapon when she saw one. "Rodriguez, Wong, get those children to the far wall," she commanded through her suit's comm system. "Martinez, Santos, we're going to give this thing something new to think about." The human crew moved without hesitation, their coordination speaking of years fighting together. Rodriguez, the team's medic, immediately began examining the injured Krothak child, while Wong gently herded the others toward what appeared to be the safest area of the arena. The children stared at these strange newcomers with wonder and desperate hope. The Vorthak child was the first to find her voice. "Are you humans?" she asked, her translator converting her words into Earth's common language. "Yes, little one," Wong replied softly, his massive frame somehow reassuring despite the deadly situation. "We're here to take you home." The Vrakthul had been confused by the sudden appearance of these new creatures, but its enhanced aggression chemicals were still flooding its system. The beast let out another earth-shaking roar and charged directly at Sarah, its 6 legs propelling its massive bulk with frightening speed. Sarah didn't run. Instead, she pulled a device from her belt that looked almost comically primitive compared to the high-tech arena around them. It appeared to be nothing more than a metal tube with simple mechanical components, but when she pointed it at the charging creature and pulled a lever, The result was spectacular. The weapon fired a projectile that struck the Vrakthul center mass with tremendous kinetic force. The beast stumbled, more from surprise than injury as the slug bounced harmlessly off its armored hide. But Sarah was already moving, rolling to one side as the creature's claws swept through the space where she had been standing. "Conventional kinetics are ineffective against that armor," Martinez shouted as he joined the fight, his own weapon spitting small metal projectiles at the beast. "Not trying to hurt it yet," Sarah replied, her voice calm despite the chaos around them. "Just getting its attention." The Vrakthul spun toward Martinez, its multiple eyes focusing on this new threat. But as it moved, Sarah was already implementing her actual plan. The projectiles her team had fired weren't designed to penetrate the creature's armor. They were designed to stick to it. Hidden in the viewing platforms above, Ambassador Kelthera watched with growing alarm as the humans moved with tactical precision around the arena floor. Their weapons were primitive, their technology laughably outdated, but there was something about their behavior that disturbed her deeply. They moved like a pack, like creatures evolved for coordinated hunting. "Activate the arena's defensive systems," she commanded her technicians. "Eliminate these intruders immediately." The arena's hidden weapon emplacements began to emerge from concealed positions in the walls, their energy projectors charging with high-pitched whines. These systems were designed to deal with riots or prisoner escapes, not full-scale combat. But they should be more than adequate for 5 primitively equipped humans. The first energy blast seared across the arena, aimed directly at Sarah's position. But the human captain was no longer there. Her environmental suit had detected the weapon's targeting systems the moment they activated, and she had already taken cover behind a crystal formation. The superheated beam struck the crystal instead, causing it to explode in a shower of glittering fragments. "They've got automated defenses," Santos reported as more weapon emplacements revealed themselves. "Looks like standard crowd control energy projectors, military grade." Sarah's smile was visible through her helmet's faceplate. "Good. That means they're networked." She pulled another device from her equipment belt, this one clearly electronic but built with the same rugged simplicity as her kinetic weapon. With practiced movements, she interfaced it with her suit's systems and began transmitting a signal that would have been impossible to detect with standard Galactic technology. The human crew had trained for situations like this. Earth's isolation from galactic civilization had forced them to develop unconventional solutions to common problems. While the rest of the galaxy relied on standardized technology and protocols, humans had been forced to innovate, adapt, and overcome with limited resources. The Vrakthul charged again, this time targeting Wong as he helped the children reach safety. The big engineer turned to face the creature, his own primitive weapon ready, but the beast was moving too fast for him to dodge effectively. Its claws were extended, aimed directly at his chest. At the last second, the arena's automated defense system fired at Wong's position. But instead of striking the human, the energy beam hit the Vrakthul square in the back. The creature stumbled, confused and angry as its own allies attacked it. "Network penetration successful," Sarah announced with satisfaction. Their security protocols weren't designed to handle analog signal intrusion. The arena's weapon systems had been completely compromised by a hacking method so primitive that the Galactic designers had never thought to defend against it. Sarah's device was broadcasting simple electromagnetic pulses that interfered with the targeting computer's basic functions, causing them to lock onto the largest heat signature in the arena rather than the designated human targets. More energy beams lanced across the arena, all of them now aimed at the increasingly confused and injured Vrakthul. The creature's bioengineered intelligence couldn't understand why its environment had suddenly turned hostile. It spun in circles trying to identify the source of the attacks, while the humans calmly continued their rescue operation. Ambassador Kelthera was screaming orders at her technicians, demanding they regain control of the arena systems, but the humans had introduced a type of technological chaos that the Council's sophisticated computers simply couldn't process. Every attempt to reset the system resulted in the same analog interference, like trying to debug a quantum computer with a hammer. The injured Krothak child looked up at Rodriguez with wonder in his rocky features. "You came for us," he said simply, "but we are not your people." Rodriguez smiled as he applied advanced medical gel to the child's wounds, technology that Earth had developed through necessity rather than choice. "Little buddy, where humans come from, all children are our people." The Vorthak child translated this for the others, and a wave of emotion passed through the group. Several of them began to cry, finally allowing themselves to believe that they might actually survive this nightmare. The Vrakthul, meanwhile, was becoming more desperate as the arena's defenses continued their relentless assault. Energy beams scorched its hide, and crystal shrapnel from the ongoing destruction cut through its armor. The creature's bioengineered instincts were telling it to retreat, but there was nowhere to go in the sealed arena. Sarah watched the beast's behavior with professional interest. She had seen combat-stressed soldiers react the same way, when overwhelmed by circumstances beyond their understanding. The creature was dangerous, but it was also afraid and confused. That made it predictable. "Santos, Martinez, maintain suppressing fire," she ordered. "Don't try to hurt it, just keep it distracted." "Wong, how are those children?" "Mobile and ready for extraction," Wong replied. "Though I'm not sure how we're getting out of here. The barriers are still active, and our ship is scrap metal by now." Sarah's smile widened as she checked her suit's sensors. "Don't worry about that. Help is already on the way." In the depths of space, 3 more human vessels were approaching the Council Station at maximum speed. Sarah's distress beacon had been broadcasting since the moment they materialized in the arena, and Earth's response had been swift and decisive. The rescue mission was about to become something much larger and more significant. The 3 human vessels that emerged from hyperspace around the Council Station were unlike anything in the galactic databases. The lead ship, Vengeance, bristled with weapon systems that appeared crude, but radiated an aura of devastating effectiveness. Behind it, the medical vessel Mercy and the engineering ship Resolve took flanking positions, their hulls scarred from previous conflicts, but their crews ready for action. Admiral Catherine Reeves commanded the small fleet from the Vengeance's bridge, her weathered face grim as she studied the tactical display. "Council Station, this is Admiral Reeves of the Earth Defense Force. You have 30 seconds to lower your barriers and release our people, or we will lower them for you." Ambassador Kelthera's response was immediate and filled with outrage. "You dare threaten a council facility? Your primitive weapons cannot penetrate our defenses. You will withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Admiral Reeves had fought in Earth's bloodiest colonial wars, survived alien plague outbreaks, and led desperate missions to protect human settlements from hostile environments. Her patience for bureaucratic threats was non-existent. 25 seconds, she replied calmly. Inside the arena, the situation was reaching a critical point. The Vrakthul, driven to desperation by the continued energy bombardment from the corrupted defense systems, had begun attacking the arena walls themselves. Its massive claws tore gouges in the crystal structure, and hairline cracks were beginning to spread across the dome overhead. Sarah Chen recognized the danger immediately. "The structural integrity is failing," she warned her team. "If that dome collapses, we'll all be exposed to vacuum." The children huddled closer together, their various species united in terror as they watched the massive creature destroy their prison around them. The Zephyrian child's wings trembled as she pressed against the Vorthak child, seeking comfort from her new friend. "My people sing when they are afraid," the small Aquarian child said suddenly, his voice barely audible above the sound of rending crystal. "Would you like me to sing?" Before anyone could answer, his pure voice rose in a haunting melody that seemed to cut through the chaos. The universal translators couldn't convert the song's words, but its meaning was clear in any language: hope, courage, and the refusal to surrender to despair. One by one, the other children began to add their own voices to the song, each in their native language but somehow harmonizing with the others. The Hiver child clicked in rhythmic counterpoint, while the Krothak child provided a deep bass rumble that resonated through the arena floor. Even the humans found themselves moved by the impromptu choir. Rodriguez wiped tears from his eyes as he continued treating the wounded, while Wong hummed along with a melody that reminded him of lullabies his grandmother had sung during Earth's darkest days. The Vrakthul paused in its destruction, confused by this new sound. Its bioengineered brain had no protocols for dealing with music, no understanding of why these small creatures would make noise when they should be silent and afraid. The beast tilted its massive head, multiple eyes focusing on the singing children with something approaching curiosity. Above them, the Council's barriers began to flicker as Admiral Reeves implemented her ultimatum. The human ships hadn't fired conventional weapons. Instead, they had deployed devices that the Council's sensors couldn't even identify, much less defend against. "What are they doing?" Kelthera demanded of her military advisors. "Our shields show no impact signatures." Commander Vextar, the Council's chief military strategist, studied his instruments with growing concern. "I'm detecting massive gravitational anomalies around our position. They appear to be manipulating local space-time in ways that should be impossible with their technology level." The truth was both simpler and more terrifying than the Council could imagine. Earth's isolation had forced human scientists to explore theoretical physics that the galaxy's standardized education system had dismissed as impractical. While other species refined existing technology, humans had been forced to invent entirely new approaches to fundamental problems. The devices Admiral Reeves had deployed were gravitational resonance generators, machines that could create artificial gravity wells at specific frequencies. They weren't weapons in any conventional sense, but they could make solid matter behave in very unconventional ways. The Council station's barriers relied on energy fields maintained by massive gravitational anchors. By resonating those anchors at their natural frequency, the human devices were causing them to vibrate themselves apart. It was like using a tuning fork to shatter crystal, but on a scale that encompassed an entire space station. The barriers collapsed with a spectacular display of released energy, sending aurora-like streamers across the surrounding space. Emergency alarms wailed throughout the station as backup systems struggled to compensate for the sudden loss of primary defenses. In the arena, the children's song faltered as the dome overhead began to buckle and crack. The Vrakthul, sensing that its environment was about to change dramatically, let out a roar of frustration and charged toward the group of humans and children. Sarah Chen stepped forward to meet the creature's charge, but she wasn't alone. Her entire team moved with her, forming a protective wall between the beast and the children they had sworn to protect. Their primitive weapons might not be able to penetrate the Vrakthul's armor, but they had other plans. The projectiles they had been firing throughout the battle hadn't been randomly placed. Each sticky slug contained a small but powerful electromagnetic charge, and they had been carefully positioned across the creature's body to create a specific pattern. Sarah triggered the activation sequence just as the beast reached them. The Vrakthul convulsed as thousands of tiny electrical discharges surged through its nervous system. The creature wasn't seriously injured, but its motor control was completely disrupted. It stumbled and fell, its massive body sliding across the arena floor to crash into the far wall. "Localized neural disruption," Sarah explained to the amazed children. "We studied the creature's physiology during the fight and identified vulnerable nerve clusters. It'll be unconscious for several hours." The Vorthak child stared at the fallen beast in amazement. "You defeated it without killing it?" Rodriguez nodded as he helped the injured Krothak child to his feet. "Where we come from, the strongest people are those who protect others without becoming monsters themselves." The arena dome finally gave way completely, exposing the interior to the station's artificial atmosphere. Through the opening, the children could see human ships moving into position, their hulls gleaming with purpose and determination. Transport beams began to shimmer around the group as the Mercy prepared to evacuate them. But before the teleportation sequence could complete, Ambassador Kelthera's voice echoed through the arena's remaining speakers. "You may have won this battle," she snarled, "but you have made enemies of the entire Galactic Council. Your primitive species will be crushed for this act of aggression." Admiral Reeves's voice cut through the diplomat's threats with calm authority.
"Ambassador, we have documented evidence of your crimes against children."
"Every major news network in the galaxy is about to receive complete recordings of your trials, along with proof that the Council has been systematically murdering young beings for entertainment." The silence that followed was deafening. Kelthera's four eyes widened in horror as she realized the implications. The Council's carefully maintained image of benevolent leadership would be shattered the moment those recordings became public. Furthermore, Admiral Reeves continued, "Earth is formally announcing the creation of the Children's Protection Alliance. Any species that wishes to withdraw from Council membership and join a civilization that actually protects its young is welcome to apply." As the transport beams lifted them toward safety, the 12 children looked back at the humans who had risked everything to save them. They would return to their homeworlds with stories that would spread across the galaxy, tales of a species that valued all children above political convenience. The humans had done more than rescue a dozen young beings. They had fired the first shot in a revolution that would transform galactic civilization forever. 3 months after the Arena rescue, the galaxy was in chaos. The recordings Admiral Reeves had transmitted were spreading faster than the Council could suppress them, carried by independent news networks, smugglers, and ordinary citizens who refused to let the truth be buried. On 1,000 worlds, parents watched in horror as they saw what the trials really meant, and their outrage shook the foundations of galactic society. The human medical ship Mercy had become a symbol of hope as it traveled from system to system, providing free medical care to any species that requested it. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the ship's chief medical officer, had developed treatment protocols that worked across dozens of different alien physiologies, proving that human medicine could be adapted to help anyone who needed it. In the ship's main medical bay, the 12 rescued children were thriving under human care. The Krothak child's wounds had healed completely, leaving only faint scars in his rocky hide that he wore with pride. The Zephyrian child had grown stronger, her wings now capable of true flight in the ship's carefully controlled artificial gravity. The Vorthak child, who had become the unofficial spokesperson for the group, stood before a holographic recorder as Dr. Vasquez helped her prepare for another interview. News networks across the galaxy wanted to hear directly from the survivors, and she had proven remarkably articulate in describing their experience. "The humans didn't just save our lives," she said, her purple scales shimmering under the medical bay's soft lighting. "They showed us what real strength looks like. They could have killed the creature, but they chose not to. They could have left us to find our own way home. But they're taking each of us back to our families personally." Her words were being transmitted to billions of viewers, many of whom had never seen humans before. The species that the Council had dismissed as primitive and barbaric was revealing itself to be something entirely different. Compassionate, innovative, and utterly unwilling to compromise when it came to protecting children. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Admiral Reeves studied reports from across the galaxy. 17 species had already withdrawn from Council membership and requested to join the newly formed Children's Protection Alliance. Dozens more were debating the decision in their planetary assemblies, while several had begun secret negotiations with human diplomats. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving another transmission from the Andromedan Trade Consortium. They're offering full membership and technology sharing in exchange for protection guarantees for their colony worlds." Reeves nodded thoughtfully. The Andromedans were among the galaxy's most advanced species, their technology rivaling even the Council's most sophisticated systems. But they had always been pacifists, relying on Council protection against more aggressive neighbors. Now they were learning that protection came with an unacceptable price. "Tell them we'll consider their offer," she replied. "But make it clear that membership in the Alliance requires absolute commitment to protecting children of all species. No exceptions, no compromises." The door to the bridge slid open and Captain Sarah Chen entered, her uniform bearing new insignia that marked her as the Alliance's Director of Rescue Operations. Her success in the arena had made her something of a legend, but she wore the fame reluctantly, preferring action to recognition. "Admiral, we've received a priority distress call," she reported, her voice tense with urgency. "The Council is conducting another trial, this time with children from 6 different species. It's being held at their maximum security facility in the Omega Centauri cluster." Reeves felt her jaw clench with anger. Despite the public outcry, despite the evidence of their crimes, the Council was continuing their barbaric practices. If anything, they seemed determined to prove that human interference wouldn't stop them from maintaining their twisted traditions. "How many ships can we mobilize?" she asked. "The Defiance has been rebuilt and upgraded with Andromedan technology," Sarah replied. "The Justice and Retribution are completing their shakedown cruises, and the Zephyrian Republic has offered 3 of their fastest vessels. We could have a full rescue fleet ready within 6 hours." But even as they planned another rescue mission, both women knew they were fighting against time. Each trial the Council conducted resulted in more innocent deaths, more families destroyed by the galaxy's supposed civilization. They needed to do more than rescue individual groups of children. They needed to end the trials permanently. Meanwhile, in the deepest levels of the Council's central command station, Ambassador Kelthera met with the organization's ruling body. The Chamber of Voices contained representatives from over 200 species, their various forms creating a bizarre tapestry of alien life as they debated their response to the human threat. "The situation is becoming untenable," declared Speaker Morden, his crystalline form reflecting the chamber's harsh lighting. 17 species have already defected, and intelligence reports suggest dozens more are considering withdrawal. If this continues, we will lose our majority membership within a year. Kelthera's 4 eyes blazed with fury as she addressed the assembly. "The humans must be stopped before they destroy everything we have built. I propose we mobilize the fleet and crush their pathetic alliance before it can grow any stronger." A murmur of concern rippled through the chamber. War with humanity would be a massive escalation, one that could destabilize the entire galaxy, but many council members were beginning to see it as their only option for maintaining power. "The humans possess technology we do not understand," warned Military Commander Vextar. "Their gravitational weapons disabled our strongest defenses with ease. A direct confrontation could prove costly." Kelthera dismissed his concerns with a wave of her elongated limbs. "They are primitives with a few lucky innovations. Once we adapt our defenses to counter their crude tactics, they will fall like any other inferior species." What the Council didn't understand was that human innovation wasn't based on random luck or stolen technology. It was the product of a species that had been forced to solve impossible problems with limited resources, creating solutions that were elegant in their simplicity and devastating in their effectiveness. Back aboard the Mercy, the rescued children were receiving visitors from their home worlds. Parents who had thought their offspring were attending a prestigious ceremony were learning the truth about what the Council had really planned. Their gratitude to the humans was overwhelming, but it came with a price. "My government wants to withdraw from the Council immediately," the Zephyrian child's father told Dr. Vasquez through trembling vocal cords. "But they're afraid of economic retaliation. The Council controls most of our trade routes." This was the challenge facing every species that wanted to join the alliance. The Council had spent centuries building an economic system that made independence seem impossible. Species that tried to leave faced trade embargoes, denied access to critical resources, and sometimes direct military intervention. The humans had a solution for that too, but it would require a level of commitment that would change the galaxy forever. Admiral Reeves was preparing to offer something that no species in galactic history had ever received: unconditional protection and support, with no strings attached except the promise to protect children. As the Vengeance prepared to lead another rescue mission, news networks across the galaxy reported a stunning development. The human government had just announced the deployment of the largest defensive fleet in Earth's history, with a simple mission statement that sent shockwaves through every Council world. Any species that chooses to protect children over politics will have the full protection of humanity behind them. Any organization that chooses to harm children for any reason will find out what humans are really capable of when they're truly angry. The galaxy was about to learn that there was a significant difference between human compassion and human weakness, and that the same species capable of infinite kindness toward children could become utterly ruthless toward those who threatened them. 1 year after the arena rescue, the galaxy had been transformed beyond recognition. The massive council chamber that had once housed representatives from over 200 species now echoed with emptiness, containing fewer than 50 delegates from worlds too dependent on council infrastructure to risk independence. Ambassador Kelthera stood alone at the central podium, her 4 eyes reflecting the bitter reality of their situation. The Children's Protection Alliance had grown into something unprecedented in galactic history. Over 160 species had joined, creating a loose confederation united by a single principle: children of all races deserved protection, education, and the right to grow up without fear. The economic and military power of this alliance had quickly surpassed the remaining council worlds. Admiral Catherine Reeves walked through the corridors of New Geneva Station, humanity's newest orbital facility, and the unofficial capital of the Alliance. The station's design reflected its purpose, with vast medical bays, educational centers, and recreational areas specifically designed to accommodate children from dozens of different species. It was everything the Council's sterile facilities were not: warm, welcoming, and alive with the sounds of young voices learning and playing together. In the main conference room, representatives from the Alliance worlds were gathered for their monthly assembly. Unlike the Council's rigid hierarchy, this was a true democracy where every voice carried equal weight. The Zephyrian delegate, now grown into a confident young adult, sat next to the massive Krothak representative whose rocky hide still bore the honorable scars from his childhood ordeal. "The last Council trial facility has been shut down," reported Captain Sarah Chen, her hair now showing streaks of gray from years of rescue operations. The Omega Centauri station was evacuated peacefully after the local population rose up and demanded an end to the trials. No children were harmed. A wave of relief swept through the assembly. The systematic elimination of the trial facilities had taken months of careful planning and coordination, but the Alliance had succeeded in ending the barbaric practice without resorting to the wholesale violence that many had predicted. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood to address the assembly, her medical uniform now bearing the insignia of the Alliance Medical Corps. "We've completed our analysis of the rescued children from all facilities. Over 3,000 young beings were saved from the trials, and our treatment protocols have achieved a 97% recovery rate for both physical and psychological trauma." The numbers represented more than statistics. Each child saved was a future scientist, artist, leader, or simply a person who would grow up to love and be loved. The Alliance had prevented an entire generation from being sacrificed to the Council's twisted concept of civilization. But perhaps the most remarkable change was in how the galaxy's various species had begun working together. Human innovation combined with Andromedan theoretical physics had produced technologies that surpassed anything the Council had ever achieved. Zephyrian artists collaborated with Krothak engineers to create architectural marvels that were both beautiful and functional. The diversity that the Council had tried to control and exploit became the Alliance's greatest strength. On a small world at the edge of the galaxy, the Vorthak child who had survived the arena had grown into a prominent diplomat. Her purple scales now carried the ceremonial markings of her species' highest honors, but she wore them humbly as she addressed a gathering of young beings from across the Alliance. "The humans taught us that strength isn't about being the biggest or the most powerful," she told the audience. Her words translated into dozens of languages. "Real strength comes from standing up for those who can't protect themselves, even when it costs you everything." The audience listened with rapt attention, many of them survivors of their own encounters with Council brutality. These children had grown up in a galaxy where compassion was valued over conquest, where cooperation was seen as strength rather than weakness. In the depths of space, the few remaining Council worlds huddled together in an increasingly desperate alliance. Their trade networks had collapsed, their military forces had been reduced to a fraction of their former strength, and their influence had dwindled to almost nothing. Ambassador Kelthara, now the de facto leader of the dying organization, stared at reports that painted a picture of inevitable defeat. "Perhaps," suggested one of her few remaining advisors, "we should consider negotiating with the Alliance. They might be willing to accept our surrender in exchange for clemency." Kelthara's response was swift and violent, her claws raking across the advisor's desk hard enough to leave gouges in the metal surface. "Never. We are the rightful rulers of this galaxy. We will not bow to primitives and their misguided allies." But even as she spoke, Kelthara knew the truth. The Council had lost, not because their technology was inferior or their military weak, but because they had fundamentally misunderstood what motivated intelligent beings. They had assumed that fear and self-interest would always triumph over compassion and cooperation. The humans had proven them catastrophically wrong. The final blow came not from human weapons or Alliance fleets, but from the children themselves. The survivors of the trials had formed their own organization, dedicated to ensuring that no future generation would face the horrors they had endured. Their testimonies, broadcast across the galaxy, carried a moral weight that no military force could match. The small Aquarian child, now a young adult studying xenobiology at the Alliance's premier university, had become the organization's most effective spokesperson. His gentle voice carried the authority of someone who had faced death and chosen to respond with life and hope. "We don't seek revenge against those who hurt us," he said during his final address to the Galactic Assembly, We seek to build a future where such cruelty is impossible. Every child in the galaxy deserves the chance to grow up safe, loved, and free to pursue their dreams. His words were heard on every inhabited world, carried by communication networks that the Alliance had built to replace the Council's restricted systems. The message was simple but revolutionary. Children mattered more than politics, compassion was stronger than cruelty, and even the smallest voices could change the entire galaxy. As Admiral Reeves stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, watching ships from hundreds of worlds dock peacefully together, she reflected on how much had changed. The rescue of 12 children from a gladiatorial arena had sparked a revolution that transformed galactic civilization. The Alliance wasn't perfect. There were still conflicts to resolve, problems to solve, and challenges to face. But for the first time in galactic history, those challenges would be met by beings working together rather than competing for dominance. The humans had given the galaxy something it had never possessed before: hope. Not hope for conquest or control, but hope for a future where every child could grow up knowing they were valued and protected by an entire civilization. In the end, that hope proved stronger than any weapon, more enduring than any empire, and more powerful than any force the galaxy had ever known. The children who had once faced death in an arena now played together in parks designed by a dozen species, their laughter echoing across the stars as a testament to what beings could accomplish when they chose cooperation over competition, love over fear, and the future over the past. The Galactic Council's deadly trap had become the catalyst for the galaxy's greatest triumph, the discovery that true civilization wasn't about who could survive the trials, but about who was willing to ensure that no one ever had to face them again.